Okay, so you just need me to mute everything.
Okay, so you guys. Member Stan.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we're just having some technical difficulties, so we're going to proceed over Zoom. Each of the members does have their Zoom here, and we do have applicants and the public with us as well. Okay,
Okay, sure.
thank you. Okay, so where did we leave off? Okay, so we're going to proceed.
Thank you. Sorry, everybody, about the technical difficulties. We're back online. We're going to be doing this virtually through Zoom using a laptop that's in the room, and everyone will be able to join as they would online now. So our apologies for that lengthy delay. We made it to the item on the agenda dealing with pecuniary interest. So we will go back to that and continue through our agenda. So I'll ask the question again of the members. Does any member of this panel have a pecuniary interest in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act and any of the applications to be considered at this hearing?
I do not.
Member Stan?
I do not.
Member Kappa? Thank you. Madam Secretary Treasurer, are there any requests for withdrawal or adjournment?
Through Mr. Chair, there has not been.
Okay, thank you. We are ready to proceed to the first application this afternoon. Our first application is file number A3-2023P. The address is 788-792 Welland Road. We will start with you, Madam Secretary Treasurer, if you could please read the summary presentation.
Yes, absolutely. Committee of Adjustment hearing March 6th at 4 p.m. The Town of Pelham is holding all hybrid Committee of Adjustment hearings. A hybrid hearing involves a mixture of in-person and remote attendance or participation. The following presentation is based on the Town of Pelham's Planning Department report and analysis. Please note that no decisions have been made prior to this public hearing. All comments received from commenting agencies and the public have been forwarded in full to the Committee of Adjustment. Participants are reminded, if you're attending virtually, please ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If you're participating virtually, please be mindful of background noise. If inappropriate language inappropriate language will not be tolerated. If used, you'll be removed from the meeting. As well, the Zoom chat is not monitored nor recommended to contact the clerk's department during this meeting. If you would like to make a comment, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Decorum. This is a Committee of Adjustment hearing and a formal public meeting requiring decorum. This means that all comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak or wish to speak in person, you'll have an opportunity to address the committee at the public portion of the hearing. If you're live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. All comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting. Inappropriate comments will also not be tolerated. To allow for an efficient meeting, each member of the public will be given the opportunity to speak to the committee during the public portion of the meeting. After all members of the public have been given the opportunity to speak, the applicants and/or agents will have the opportunity to address the public comments. Our first application this evening is A3-788/792 Welland Road. Subject land is located on the south side of Welland Road, lying east of Church Street, known locally as 788 and 792 Welland Road. The site currently supports the former Fenwick Fire Hall Station 2. This application seeks relief from Section 19.1 permitted uses to permit second-story residential dwelling units above ground floor dwelling units outside and rear yards, whereas the bylaw permits residential dwelling units above grade, above commercial uses only. 19.3A regulations for residential uses to permit 66% of the gross floor area to be used for residential uses, whereas the bylaw allows not more than 50%. 19.3B regulations for residential uses to permit dwelling units above the ground floor dwelling unit outside and rear yard, whereas the bylaw permits dwelling units above grade, above commercial only. Regulations for residential uses permit a minimum landscape amenity area of 25 meters squared per dwelling unit, whereas the bylaw requires 30 meters squared. Section 6.16A parking requirements residential uses to permit 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit, whereas the bylaw requires 1.5 spaces. 6.16A parking requirements retail office uses to permit a rate of 1 space per 52 meters squared gross floor area, whereas the bylaw requires 1 space per 30 meters squared. And 6.16A parking requirements eating establishments to permit a rate of 1 space per 6-person seating capacity, whereas the bylaw requires a rate of 1 space per 4 persons seating capacity. To date, the following comments have been received. The building division, C conditions, Public Works, no comments. And at the time of writing this report, no public comments were received. Is the variance minor in nature? Variance 1 and 3 permitted uses. Yes, the ground level commercial space is being maintained along Welland Road frontage. The variance is not anticipated to detract from the commercial function of the site. The residential units will be in the roof structure, also minimizing the impact with regards to building height. Variance 2, regulations for residential uses. Yes, the requested increase from 50 to 66 represents an increase of approximately 16%. Ample commercial space exists fronting Welland Road, and the primary function of the site as viewed from Welland Road appears commercial. Variance 4, regulations for residential uses. Yes, each residential dwelling unit will maintain a private amenity area. In addition, Centennial Park is a short distance from the site, providing active recreational space in proximity to the site. There remains ample amenity area to service the proposed dwelling units. Variance 5, parking requirements. Yes, the variance represents a reduction of 4 residential parking spaces in total. Each residential unit will have a dedicated parking space in addition to 5 additional spaces. In addition, the commercial parking spaces can be used as visitor spaces outside of business hours. Variance 6, parking requirements retail office. Yes, the reduction of 5 spaces, given the relatively small commercial gross floor area, 6 parking spaces is considered appropriate. Additionally, the downtown master plan identifies Welland Road as being capable of providing up to 25 new on-street parking spaces, including 4 across the Welland Road frontage of the site. Variance 7, parking requirements, eating establishments. Yes, the variance would result in a reduction of only 2 spaces. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? Variance 1 and 3 permitted uses. Yes, permitting residential uses above grade will offer apartment residents easy access to local stores and services and contribute to the housing stock in the Fenwick settlement area. Variance 2, regulations for residential uses. Yes, allowing for increased residential gross floor area will allow for a more diverse housing stock in the Fenwick settlement area. The increase in gross floor area will support the adaptive reuse of the former fire hall and facilitate the development of an underutilized site in a settlement area. Variance 4, regulations for residential uses, minimum landscaped amenity area. Yes, each residential dwelling unit will maintain a private amenity area and facilitate a compact development that provides adequate public and private amenity space. Variances 5, 6, and 7, parking requirements. Yes, residential and commercial spaces have different peak parking demands at different times of the day. This allows for more efficient use of spaces and ultimately a reduced parking supply that avoids an oversupply, which is desirable for the development of the site. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Yes, the property's commercial function is maintained. From a streetscape perspective, the building will appear commercial. Commercial space is maintained at grade along Welland Road. Each dwelling will have access to a functional amount of private amenity space. A parking justification letter was prepared by BA Group, which found the proposed parking supply is sufficient for the anticipated demand of the site based on the number of considerations, including more than one space is available for the exclusive use of each dwelling unit. And test 4, does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Yes, the proposed development is within the settlement area and provides for a development concept in compact form, which is compatible with the surrounding area. The variance will help diversify the land use mix and add housing supply in the settlement area of Fenwick. The reduction in amenity area will continue to contribute to a compact development while providing adequate amenity area. The variance will result in the type of development that is envisioned for the town's official plan. Further, the official plan contemplates exemptions from on-site parking requirements as a tool to encourage compact development and mixed-use intensification. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposal makes efficient use of the land, will not result in the overbuilding of the property, will not alter the view, sightlines, or personal enjoyment of the subject property or any neighboring properties, and should not negatively impact the surrounding area with regard to land use incompatibility, traffic, privacy, and stormwater runoff. Subject to the submission and approval of an overall lot grading and drainage plan, staff do recommend that application number A3 be approved, subject to the following conditions: that the applicant obtain the necessary building permit for future construction of the proposed mixed-use building, and the applicant apply for and obtain approval for site plan amendment from the Director of Community Planning and Development. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the Secretary Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Sarah Leach, Secretary Treasurer to the Committee of Adjustment, sleach@pelham.ca. This contact information is also found on the Town of Pelham's website. Through you, Mr. Chair, you may proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. We'll now proceed to, I see that there's some representatives in the room today on behalf of the applicant. I would ask them, before we move to the public portion of the meeting, if they would like to comment, or I believe there's a presentation as well, if you'd like to speak to the presentation or speak to the outline that was provided by Ms. Leach. And sorry, before you begin, please state your names as well.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Ethan Lamont. I'm a junior planner at Upper Canada Consultants. This is William High Group, another planner at Upper Canada Consultants. I do have a presentation. A lot of it is going to be redundant from staff's presentation, but I do think it'll be helpful to provide a bit of an overview of the proposal. So the property is the site of the former Fenwick Fire Hall, located at 788 and 792 Welland Road. It's in proximity to Fenwick's existing downtown area. So the downtown or the commercial properties in Fenwick are highlighted in blue in this image. Under the official plan, it's designated as urban living area. And there's a site-specific neighborhood commercial zoning on the property. So the neighborhood commercial zoning was passed in conjunction with a previous mixed-use development of the site. So that development proposal includes 4 commercial units fronting on Welland Road, with 4 residential apartment units above it. And as well, that proposal proposed the conversion of the former Fenwick Fire Hall building into residential units. There's 32 parking spaces at grade, and there's been a pretty comprehensive site plan approval process that's gone through the town for that proposal. So the current proposal seeks to add a second floor of dwelling units on top of the existing fire hall building, which would yield an additional 7 units. The previous massing and built form and overall site layout is being maintained. The only difference is the additional units in the second floor of the fire hall building. Those additional units have triggered the need for the variances that we're here for tonight, and the proposal will remain subject to site plan approval. So the variances have been discussed in some detail tonight, but just to provide an overview, the variances are to permit an increase in gross floor area for dwelling units, to permit a reduction in minimum landscaped amenity area, and we'll just note that there are balconies being provided for the second floor units, which act as amenity space, to permit a reduction in parking, and to permit second floor dwelling units in the side and rear yard. So as it relates to the 4 tests, I'm not going to belabor the point here as there was a pretty comprehensive overview. But just as an overview, maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The uses are permitted in the official plan, and the proposal provides mixed-use redevelopment that supports the long-term viability of Fenwick's downtown area. Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? The site-specific zoning was approved for the previous development proposal. The current proposal maintains the overall layout, massing and functionality of the previous proposal for which the zoning was passed. Is it desirable for the appropriate use and development of the lands? The variances facilitate efficient mixed-use development of an underutilized parcel in Fenwick's downtown area. And a parking study has been completed, which confirms that the proposed parking supply is adequate for the site. And is the variance minor in nature? There are no negative impacts that result from the variances. So that concludes my presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you for your presentation. Is there anything else from you guys at this point, or we'll come to the questions in a moment. So thank you. I'd ask Ms. Leach if there's anyone who's pre-registered via Zoom that is here to speak to this matter.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have no one pre-registered via Zoom. I will also just check my clerk's email account. And we have received no emails. I would just recommend that you open the public portion up to the floor.
Thank you. Let's do so. Let's open the public portion. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak to this? Yes, come on up to the podium.
Yes, I'm Barry Robbins and I live at 781 Welland Road. My only thinking is the day I got this letter, I looked over at the fire hall and it was 14 vehicles parked there. There's nobody working there. Today, when I came to the meeting, there were 11 trucks, 2 trailers, and a Genie platform lift on the property. You say you're going to have 10 units for living in, 1.25 parking spaces. If you have 5 couples renting apartments that have a vehicle each, you only have 2.5 parking spaces left for the other 5 units. You have 4 commercial units and you have just 2 people working in each unit. There's another 8 spaces gone before you even have any customers. The big problem in Fenwick is there is no parking. And if you're there's nothing wrong with building the unit itself. I think it's a great idea, but you have to provide parking for the people that are going to be using the unit. What kind of business is going to stay in business if their customers can't find a place to park? And I don't know what it is with the downtown, but everybody wants to provide that parking. How do you stay in business if you don't have customers? That's all I've got to say. I just think we need parking in Fenwick, and if you're building something in Fenwick, you should provide the parking, the standards that unit needs.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins, for those comments. Is there anybody else in the room looking to speak to this matter?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. If there's no one else wishing to make public comments, you may now close the public portion of the meeting, and I confirm that it is 4:58 p.m.
Thank you. Do we have do we need a motion for that? Yes. Motion to close the public meeting. We have mover.
Thank you,
Ms. Stan will second. Good, thank you.
What do we
So we've
call-
now
like a
closed that.
standard? Sure.
So perhaps okay, thank you. I'd ask the representatives if they would like to speak in response to the comments that were made by Mr. Robbins with respect to parking. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thanks. I think this one is a little bit unique in the circumstance that we're in, considering the new comprehensive zoning bylaw. I think it's important to point out that the new comprehensive zoning bylaw previously approved by council that's currently under appeal has the 1.25 parking space requirement. So for the residential component, we're meeting that. So overall, when you add up all the different parking requirements, we're essentially 4 spaces short of what the zoning bylaw requires in that new bylaw. And I would point out that there are 4 of those on-street parking spaces out front of the commercial units. So these commercial units are specifically smaller than your typical bigger box type of commercial units. We've done this in the downtown core area where we're trying to promote walkability and that sense of pedestrian atmosphere. So I think this proposal balances the commercial needs appropriately with the residential needs. I think the parking study goes into detail about how there are different peak uses. Now, I can't speak to people trespassing and using the property illegally, but I can speak to the parking study and the ratios and what those zoning provisions are. And I feel like they've been put in place for good reason based on good hard data. And I feel like we've come with a balanced approach that means we're not having an oversupply of parking and it's efficient. So you look at what market needs there are. If we have some smaller shops, maybe a cake shop, maybe something smaller, we're not seeing those intensive uses. So those would be my comments. Thank you.
Sarah, if it's possible, if I could speak.
Thank you, Mr. Haikoop. Are there any comments or questions from the members? Please proceed, Mr. Kappa.
Can you guys hear me? Great. So just my question is, maybe you can give us a big picture, right? Number of units, number of parking spots that you have on site. I think you mentioned 34? 32. 32. Okay, so. Okay. Right. So almost 2 spaces per all units if you wanted to. Okay, I just wanted to confirm the total number. And then that doesn't include the 4 out front. Okay, thank you.
Any questions, Member Stan? Any comments or questions on this matter?
No, I have no questions. I think it looks like a good proposal for the downtown Fenwick area. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Member Stan. My questions also had centered around parking, and I think I received the responses I was looking for through that discussion. I think, when we're looking at this proposal, we're looking at what's been approved and what the additional committee application is as well. And in this case, it's to slightly change the design, add more intensity, add the residential to one side. It does change the parking ratio. It does add that. And I think it's going to be a change for Fenwick. It's going to be a little bit different than what's there now. But I see this as evolutionary for the town. I think there may be some on-peak parking at peak times, and that's what BA Group's report's done. I looked at that very closely, and I gave careful consideration to that. And I understand that there might be some parking that's a little bit different than what's there now. But ultimately, I think this is a really good application for the town. I think it's something that we can be proud of, and I'll be supporting it. for that reason. So I think that then wraps up the committee debate section here. Is there a mover or seconder relating to this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we would be looking for a motion to either approve or deny the
Oh,
application.
yes, thank you. Thank you. Is there a mover to approve or deny?
I see Member Stan is wishing to speak. I'll just turn my volume up so you may hear her.
So I can do the motion for the application. So file A3 2023 P 788 792 Welland Road in the town of Pelham. Application is made for minor variances to permit second-story dwelling units above ground floor dwelling units at the side and rear yards. 66% of the gross floor area to be used for residential uses. Dwelling units above ground floor dwelling units. Minimum landscape amenity area of 25 square meters. 1.25 parking spaces per residential dwelling unit. 1 parking space for 52 square meters of gross floor area for retail/office uses. 1 parking space per 6-person seating capacity for eating establishments. The application is granted. And the reasons are the variances are minor in nature as they will not detract from commercial function of the site. There is ample commercial space exists, ample amenity area remains, and the ample parking is available. The intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained. The intent of the official plan is maintained. The proposal is desirable for the land as it offers easy access to stores and services, contributes to the housing stock of Fenwick settlement area. It will support reuse of former fire hall and facilitate development of an underutilized site in the settlement area. It'll also facilitate development that provides adequate public and private amenity space and allow for efficient use of parking spaces and avoids oversupply. This application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. No objections were received from commenting agencies or abutting property owners. The Committee of Adjustment considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meets the Planning Act test for minor variance. There's 2 conditions: obtain necessary building permits and apply for and receive a site plan amendment.
Do we have a seconder?
I second that motion.
As unanimous.
Moved. Thank you. Carried. That concludes that matter. Thank you very much. We will move on to the next item. We're going to be hearing 2 items together. There are 2 consent items relating to 1433 Station Street and 1435 Station Street. These are file numbers B2/2023P and B3/2023P.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I will share our presentation.
Thank you.
Application for consent filed B2/2023P and B3/2023P 1433/1435 Station Street. The subject parcels are interior parcels of land situated approximately 60 meters east of Station Street, lying south of Highway 20 East. Applications are made for consent to convey 2849.9 square meters and 2432.2 square meters of land to be added to the property to the south, being Part 5. Parts 1 and 2 are to be retained for continued residential uses of 1433 and 1435 Station Street. Please note that B2/2023P and B3/2023P are intended to facilitate the future development of additional phase of Park Place West subdivision. To date, the following comments have been received. From the Building Department, no comment. Public Works Department, C conditions. Hydro 1, no comments or concerns. No public comments were received at the time of writing this report. However, since that time, we have received 1 comment. Concerns regarding drainage, would like to know how mitigation efforts or how noise/vibration and traffic flow will be controlled. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposed boundary lot adjustments are consistent with the PPS and conforms to the provincial, regional, and local plans. The resulting parcels comply with with application zoning bylaw regulations and should not negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood with respect to traffic, privacy, and stormwater management. Planning staff recommend that application numbers B2/2023P and B3/2023P be approved, subject to the following conditions. That the applicant confirm no existing utilities cross the proposed new property line. Should any services cross this new property line, the applicant is responsible for their relocation and/or removal so that utilities do not cross the property line. Provide a written acknowledgement that the owner of Part 4 will be responsible for the payment of the front-ending contribution payable to the town of Pelham for the East Font Hill Stormwater Management System oversizing. This apportionment will be in the amount of $35,462 for 1433 Station Street and $35,145 for 1435 Station Street. That the Secretary Treasurer be provided with a registrable legal description of the subject parcel together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. And that the final certification fee of $423 payable to the Treasurer, Town of Pelham, be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. All costs associated with fulfilling conditions of consent shall be borne by the applicant. And to clarify, that will be 2 consent fees, so 1 per application. Specifically for B2/2023P, that the applicant ensure Part 4 merges on title with Part 5. And specifically for B3/2023P, that the applicant ensure Part 3 merges on title with Parts 4 and 5. That the town will require a 5-meter wide storm sewer easement along the northerly boundary line of 1435 Station Street, being Part 3. And that application for consent B3/2023P receive final certification of the Secretary Treasurer concurrently with application B2/2023P, or that the applicant provide the Secretary Treasurer with sufficient evidence indicating that Part 4 on the sketch, being B2/2023P, be registered prior to Part 3 on the sketch, being B3/2022P. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the Secretary Treasurer in writing as soon as possible. Sarah Leach, Secretary Treasurer to the Committee of Adjustment, 20 Pelham Town Square, PO Box 400, Font Hill, Ontario, LOS 1EO. Email sleach@pelham.ca, and you can also find this contact information on the Town of Pelham website. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. Looks like we have someone from the for the representative here. We're happy to turn the floor over to you if you'd like to speak and provide comment.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee and the public. My name is Matt Kernahan. I'm the planning manager at Upper Canada Consultants, and I represent the owners of 1433 as well as 1435 Station Street. I don't have a presentation for the committee this evening. Just to reiterate some of the salient points that staff made. Purpose of this application is to facilitate a boundary adjustment. That boundary adjustment will consolidate the backyards of these 2 properties with a parcel of land which is owned by Mountain View Homes and currently has draft approval for a plan of subdivision. The intent is that that these lands, which are subject to the application, will be folded into that draft plan of subdivision, and it'll be amended to include them. So to that end, I should mention that in order to affect the consolidation or the development of these lands in concert with that plan of subdivision, approval for a red line revision will be sought by town council, and these will also be subject to a zoning bylaw amendment. Through that process, some of the more detailed considerations such as stormwater management, how the lots will be graded, those will be dealt with through conditions of approval of the draft plan of subdivision as they are for the additional lands to the south already. So I just thought I should mention that. I also should mention that I do represent Mountain View Homes, and I was responsible for making application and receiving approval for that draft plan of subdivision that these lands will be merged with. So I'll leave it there and open myself up to any questions the committee has. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kernahan. We will come back to you with some questions. So thank you. Ms. Leach, is there anyone who has pre-registered to speak on Zoom?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have no pre-registered members of the public. I will just confirm that we've received no emails as well.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. Yes,
And we have received no emails. You may turn it over to the gallery.
Thank you for confirming that. Yes, of course. We're coming to you. Please step forward and start with your name, please, ma'am.
My name is Mary Ann Joyce. I have laryngitis, so you have to bear with me. I live at 1437 Station Street. Do I have to unmute something on here? So my concerns are because I live right directly beside 1435 Station Street, and I'm not used to planning designs or anything, but I know that there is a public easement that corresponds with my driveway. And I'm not sure if that is the town of Pelham easement or if that is an easement that is going to be required to be accessed on a regular basis and how that will impact my property. If that is so, if it is going to be accessed, I believe there is sort of a swill at the back of my property and kind of abutting with this end of Sobeys property. I don't know if that's something the town does require to be accessed. And therefore, I'd like to find out for sure what is going to happen there. Also, if it is going to be something that needs to be accessed, the trees that are on 1435 Station Street, will they be removed? That, of course, will also impact my property as well. So I do have questions about that. One thing I want to make very clear to put on the record is that I had a major flood in my basement thanks to Fonthill Yards, which was quite a ways across the street. And with this whole new subdivision being developed, I want it on record that if there is any flooding problems whatsoever, I will not want to be held responsible for that because I've already had to go through insurance once. And this is a large subdivision that's in the planning stages and being developed. And if I have some sort of floods on my property or there's any damage, I want there to be a record of that so that I can have that verified and supported. Also, I do have concerns about the noise. And I know that you can't stop construction. I know we can't stop development. I respect that. But it is a home and there's going to be a lot of noise being created by this. Plus, I also have grave concerns about traffic control. Station Street is already a racetrack as it is. Very thankful for stop signs to have been put in between Highway 20 and Summersides. It continues to be a racetrack. I'm just wondering what is the plans for traffic calming. Because there is so much development being created on Summersides, and now with this one, is there going to be roads on any of these properties between the homes? I would think not, but I just want to be reassured that they are going to look at that very seriously. We are a senior mecca. I live across from a school with young kids. I have many seniors walking past our properties. And with the traffic, I believe it is a great concern for Pelham and for the area because we are in a very lucrative situation with all the stores and the conveniences. Also, I have a question about when would the expected start date be for this planning? And I'm just wondering on 1433, the little bank of trees that still exists there with the development, is that also going to be taken down? Which again, also creates even less privacy. So like, I just want to make sure that whoever, like Mountain View Homes in their strategic planning, that they be mindful of the existing homes that are there and for the traffic and for just Pelham as a whole. We were a very quiet, nice community. We've grown to major heights. And I would really hate to lose that small town feel that I've known for 35 years. So I just would like reassurances from the builders that they will be doing their due diligence and that they will protecting my investment as well. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Ms. Joyce. Could I ask you, sorry, to confirm your address again for me, if you're comfortable? I was looking at which one your house was, so I could look at it closely. 1437. Thank you. Thank you for those comments. If I may, and there's no other people in the room, we would look for a motion then to close the public portion of the meeting, if there's a mover for that. Mr. Kappa will move.
I can
Yes, I
second,
move to close.
I can second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Stan. The public portion is now closed. We will turn to our committee debate section. Are there any questions, comments from committee members? I don't see anything from Ms. Stan or Mr. Kappa. Maybe I can ask the Mr. Kernahan to address some of the questions, some of the comments that we heard from Ms. Joyce. I've made some notes about the categories, as I'm sure you have, but I'll leave it open for you to start, please, Mr. Kernahan.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. With respect to the easement along the north portion of 1435 Station Street, I can report that the purpose of that easement is to construct a municipal storm sewer not along the northernmost part of the property, but in the northern part of 1435 Station Street. The purpose of that storm sewer is to actually improve drainage in the general area. It'll collect stormwater that goes largely untreated right now from Station Street, and then it will convey it easterly through the storm sewer under the ground to an open channel, which is located east of the subject property. So it will not be accessed regularly. The purpose of the easement is to ensure that the town has the right to access the location where the storm sewer is, and that nobody can build anything upon the location where that storm sewer is. So it won't be a regularly accessed thing, but it will, by design, contribute to the improvement of the drainage in the neighborhood.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to pause you there, Mr. Kernahan. Could you describe then, so the easement will go to the town, is that correct? They'll have the benefit of the easement?
That is correct. So there will be, and actually as a condition of approval on the severance that pertains to 1435 Station Street, a 5-meter wide swath of land along the northern boundary of 1435 Station Street, which is now 1435 Station Street. There will be an easement located in that location.
Right, okay, I think I understand now. So this is something that the town has agreed or has added as a condition, should the consent be granted, that easement exists.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. They could take it with the permission of the property owner without the need for a consent, which is why there is no application for a consent for easement, because the municipality has that right. And I should also say that this is something which has been in the works for a very long time. As part of the development of the East Vaughan Hills secondary plan, there was a master stormwater management strategy that was created, and part of that strategy was to convey the flows from Station Street easterly across this property. It's only now through this process that the municipality has taken the opportunity to secure that easement. I could leave that there and carry on through the other questions if you'd like. You know, there was a question regarding or a comment regarding noise. Obviously, construction here, like construction anywhere, would have to comply with the town's noise bylaw, and those activities would need to be during regular business hours. So recognizing that no construction site is without nuisance impacts, but obviously they're temporary and we would be subject to that noise bylaw.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, Mr. Kernahan, but is there typically a construction management plan that the town requires for this kind of matter? What does that cover, if so?
So yes, at times through conditions of draft plan approval, there are requirements to manage construction activities. Those include directing construction traffic in certain ways so as to not disrupt existing residents. The time which construction activities can take place, and also remedial measures should there be nuisance impacts realized. Numbers to call if there's a complaint regarding dust, procedures for dealing with things like mud tracking on the road and other construction impacts that occasionally arise. So that would be a typical condition of subdivision approval that the developer would have to adhere to, in the future.
Thank you.
So on the theme of traffic, again, this application, which is before the committee, is just to shift the ownership of land from one person to another. So there wouldn't be any direct traffic impacts from this application. But I should mention that the future development of the Park Place West subdivision, to which these will be added, doesn't have any direct access to Station Street. The development connects Summersides Boulevard to Meridian Way, and there's internal roads within it that would guide traffic to those two streets. With respect to the start date, hard to tell in these current market conditions, but I would suggest it is at least a year away. Construction is at least a year away. As we've heard, there's a subsequent rezoning and amendment to the plan of subdivision, which in the best case scenario would take us to the end of this year, I would suggest.
Mr. Kernahan, sorry to interrupt. I'm interrupting you again, but could you maybe describe for us a bit more what that process looks like after this step when you say plan of subdivision? What is
certainly that? So the developer of that Park Place subdivision would need to draw up an amended plan for that subdivision. There's a number of different studies that need to be completed in support of that application, including archaeological assessments, functional servicing and stormwater management reports, and a planning justification report. Once those supporting studies are complete and the subdivision is amended, an application would be made to the planning department. The process is similar to the committee of adjustment process in that agencies and staff are circulated on that application, as well as the public are circulated on that application, and comments are requested. Once those comments come in, planning staff formulate a recommendation, and in that case, council considers the recommendation. And similar to a consent, the recommendation is typically an approval with conditions, and those conditions become similar to conditions of severance, become like the homework that the developer has to do to demonstrate that they'll keep the community's best interests in mind. So I think I'll leave it at that, other than to say that, Mountain View, the future owner of these lands that I represent, they are a big part of this community. They're not just in and out. They've invested quite a bit. So they have a vested interest to make sure that this community is a high quality one. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kernahan. Are there any questions from the board members in respect to what Mr. Kernahan spoke to just now?
I have no questions.
I have no questions either.
Thank you, Mr. Kappa. My questions have also been answered. Thank you, Mr. Kernahan. Members, are we ready to render a decision? I'm seeing a nod from Mr. Kappa. Go ahead.
we good? Yes. So based on what we've heard, it actually sounds, good news in some ways because it sounds like the drainage situation is being dealt with and hopefully will improve over time. So that's actually a very, very positive thing. In terms of the other points that we mentioned, they might be separate from this specific proposal because as Mountain View goes down their road of development, there is opportunity to look at that again. But based on these two properties, I think they pretty much met what is required. So I'd like to move to approve file B2 2023P and B3 2023P, 1433 and 1435 Station Street, Pelham, which is merging part 4 with 5 and partial discharge of mortgage, merge part 3 and parts 4 and 5 is hereby granted. The above decision is subject to the following conditions. To the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works, confirm no utilities cross the proposed lot line, which we have done. Proven written knowledge that the owner of plot 2, 3, and 4 will be responsible for payment of the front-ending contribution for East Font Hill Stormwater Management System oversizing. To satisfaction of the Treasury, that B3 2023P receive concurrent certification with B2 2023P or provide proof of registration of part 4 first. Merge part 4 with part 5, merge part 3 with parts 4 and 5. Provide the Secretary Treasurer a solicitor's written undertaking, registerable legal description, copy of the deposited reference plan, and that the final certification fee of $423 be provided. And the decision is really all based on the application conforming and complies with the town official plan, the regional policy plan, and the provincial policy statement, and the town zoning bylaw. This decision is rendered having regards to section 5124 and 5125 of the Planning Act. Committee considered all written and oral submissions and finds that subject to the conditions, this application meets Planning Act criteria, is consistent and complies with provincial, regional, and town planning. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's carried. That takes us to the end of that item. And the conclusion of the hearing of the matters this evening. I believe, Ms. Leach, we have to move to the minutes for approval from our last meeting. We can do this as a block.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. We have 2 sets of minutes up for approval being February 2nd and February 7th.
I can move.
I second the motion.
And
Yes.
seconded.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion to adjourn as well? Yes, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. I second that motion.
Sorry, Member Scan, were you moving or seconding that motion?
I can move to adjourn.
And I'll second it.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, it is 5:32 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.